So we'll talk about a couple of leadership styles. Empowerment was kind of an 80s thing. Employee empowerment is a process of giving frontline employees authority to make decisions once reserved for managers. Empowerment, more correlated with the Theory Y style of management of Douglas McGregor. This is a coaching style, while McGregor's Theory X was more of authoritative style. With Theory Y, leaders have more optimistic view of the ability to get work done from employees. This makes them more likely to implement empowerment than Theory X leaders who are less trusting of worker capability. So over the years, I've been trying to move from Theory X to Theory Y. I believe in Theory Y. But empowerment by itself has a little bit of a weakness. It has total faith and trust without necessarily a vision of the system, and it doesn't really talk about how you inspire or how you lead. Then there's leadership style, the teacher. Management systems paired with empowerment. Meaning, how do you teach if you don't have a system to teach? It's very difficult. So if you go into a shop that's a batch processing shop that's just a mess, and it hasn't been 5S, it looks like your project, Nina. It looks like your project with no 5S. You can vouch for me. That was pretty bad in there, wasn't it? Yeah, pretty bad. And there is no system. There are no rules. There is no structure. There's nothing to really learn from. So it's very, very difficult to teach people when you don't have a great system developed. When you have a great system developed, it makes it much, much easier for you to be a teacher in that system. So for instance, standardization of process, I see deviation. Standardization of the facility, I can see deviation. Means I can teach when I see it. Standardized management work, I look for deviation. Hoshin plan or policy deployment, I understand our direction, the why we exist. I can preach it. Continuous improvement, I can improve the standards. So what I'm saying is, teaching's great, but what do you teach? If there's not a structure in place, if you don't have a Toyota production system, you don't have a great operating system, then it makes it very difficult for you to be a teacher. It makes it almost impossible. You would never want to empower people in that system because their improvements would be random. It wouldn't necessarily be improving an existing system, making it better, because there's no system to make better. So it'd be very random. Okay, now I'm going to give Bob some credit. I'm going to say he's a teacher, empowerment, and authoritarian. I'm going to give him all three. And I give him all three because he taught, he empowered, but the empowerment was of all the employees that are building the car. Loved them. Gave them everything they could possibly want. Anything they wanted. Bob, we need a drinking fountain. We only have 12 minutes for a break, and that one's 50 yards away. Get them a drinking fountain. They could get whatever they want. He loved them. So he empowered 2,000 people, and he brutalized 200. So he had a little bit of both. And he was a teacher because he understood the system very well. And he spotted deviation. And when he spotted deviation to the system, he taught. Brutal teacher, but he did teach. So management styles combined, the business environment may dictate the style. For example, if the job market is strong, a heavy authoritarian approach may be very problematic. So you got to be very careful about what culture you're working in and what you use. Bob's approach probably wouldn't work out west in Silicon Valley. He would have no one working there, right? Bob's approach might work in Detroit if somebody has no other alternative but that place to work. So you got to be really careful with that one. And it's not ideal. So authoritarian, not effective long term. And I'd also say authoritarian is very personality dependent. Your results of an organization depends on the personality. The person leaves, you definitely get better or worse depending on who replaces them, because you're dependent upon this authoritarian for control. And that's my explanation of why early Detroit, 50s, 60s, they had people like that, because their systems weren't highly developed like Toyota. So they were dependent upon these tough managers because they had to have somebody control this beast, and they didn't have a system that did it for them. So they were personality dependent, not process dependent, like Toyota. Toyota could teach. Toyota says, we teach our people. We inspire them. They go to Toyota not to make cars, but to make people. Because they have a system. My point about a system, right? You can't teach and you can't empower if you don't have structure. If you don't have well-developed systems, you can't teach and you can't empower. You need an ogre because there's no control of the place. You need to be personality dependent on an authoritarian. Teacher, somewhat effective, but requires a system. Empowerment can be effective with a highly defined system. Remember how I said completely relinquish control to the people that run the operation or that actually build the product? You can. If you have a well-developed system, it probably would be effective. But everyone needs to know how the system functions. Then you have teacher empowerment. If you combine the two, it's highly effective. Now we have a system, we have people who are completely empowered. I want a drinking fountain, I get a drinking fountain. I know that's a silly example, and I have people teaching, helping as leaders, why we do what we do. And then finally, teacher empowerment authoritarian. I think most effective. Now a lot of people would argue with me about that. In other words, there's got to be some element of control there, in my opinion. Some. Got to reserve the right here and there. Okay, now here's my argument for that. This is Taiichi Ohno. Remember Taiichi Ohno said, I don't want to tell them what they're doing wrong. I want to try to persuade them to learn our system. I want to lead. I want them to come along, right? good guy, right? Good guy who just cares about humanity. He's got a great system, and he's going to lead them, and he's going to have them come along. Except for this. Does anybody know what that is? Ono would walk out to the Gemba, and he would draw a circle on the floor, and he'd say, stand in that circle till you learn something. Does that sound like respect for people to you? How would you like that? How would you like, hey, look, I noticed I didn't think you were paying attention in class. I want you to stand right here the whole class, and when we're done, I want you to tell me what you learned. Does that sound respectful? So, kind of question this a little bit. To me, Ono sounds a little bit like Bob. Now, on the other hand, he loved the people that put the parts together. And he was really very, very tough on the manager. And by the way, he was highly effective. I love this quote from him too. Data is, of course, important, but I place greater emphasis on facts. How many people are in senior design? Good luck with the data. I mean, I know you have to manipulate it. I understand that. But when you get it, you'll start seeing how it doesn't necessarily tell you what you want it to tell you. But you have to analyze it. Data is good. It's important. But I place greater emphasis on facts. What Ono's saying is go to the Gemba. Understand what's really happening. So here's this guy. Now, to further my case on Ono, help me, Ali. I might have to downsize this for a minute. And you've seen this before, but I just want you to see this and hear what he's saying, because this guy, this Ono walking around loving everybody and hugging them is not necessarily the truth.
You know, whenever he goes to Gemba and finds that the supervisor is not really looking his affairs, you know, grab the neck, bring him over to his place, and do a circle with the chalk, and tell him, you stay in there and have a good look till I come back. So everybody, you know, got scared and trembled. But, and he was true, he was very tough on the managers, but not on the operators, you know.
That sounds a lot like Bob. It sounds like he's got a little bit of authoritarian mixed in there, doesn't it? Okay, you've heard this one before, but I'm going to sum it up.
Is improvement of leadership, which we commonly call supervision. I think that it should be called leadership. Leading people to help them to do a better job, be it in management or on the factory floor. Supervision should be replaced by leadership. There's no secret, once again, about what leadership is. What leadership must do is to help people.
So you must be great leaders if you're going to make a fortune and do great and change companies. You must have that, or you will not. You will not make it to high levels within the organization. I just promise you that. It's critically important for you to know that. It's something you should really think about. Now, I put this on Canvas, just for your benefit. You don't have to turn it in. But it is the Blake and Moten Managerial Grid for Leadership Assessment. And I really love how this is formulated, because you'll notice after you do this and then you calculate your scores around people and tasks, this is the matrix that you plot. And they want you to be a 9-9 team leader. It's really taking into account humans and how you, and process and task, and where do you stand on that grid? So one thing I want to caution you about when you take this is what people need to do when they take surveys. And I've got to watch it myself. Sometimes you have a tendency to answer the way you think. That sounds good. I think I'm kind of that way, but try to be as accurate as you possibly can to see where you stand on this grid. And then you kind of get a sense of, okay, here's the work I need to do to improve my ability to lead. So the great thing about this is leadership isn't necessarily tied to experience. It's more about who you are and how you think and how you treat people and how you work with people. You can do that here. You can develop your skills around that here.